It amazes me that to convince black people that Donald Trump cares about them, he takes pictures with celebrities. It's amazing to me. If Donald Trump cared about black people, he wouldn't have denigrated the president with those claims of birtherism.
But part of that is starting off with Snoop Dogg and Nelly and Soulja Boy and others for their decisions to perform at events surrounding the inauguration.
It all kicked off with one weekend and one stage. Snoop Dogg walked into Inauguration Week with the kind of spotlight most artists dream about, standing alongside Nelly and Rick Ross while every camera rolled and every timeline waited to catch something. The optics hit first. To a lot of fans, it didn't look like just another paid performance. It looked like a statement. Snoop, the former rebel and West Coast icon, vibing in a space his younger self would have torched with words. Within hours, the clips were everywhere. The internet didn't just watch, it pounced. Comments piled up calling him a sellout, a mascot, a man dancing for a room that barely acknowledges hip-hop unless it's convenient. The jokes turned into edits, and the edits turned into think pieces.
Most important thing is there's got to be a solution, because this has been going on in the industry for a whole years, for decades. And at the same time, you know, nobody wants this to be true, and it shouldn't have to be true. But if we don't fix it and do something about it, history will constantly
repeat itself. Now, Suge, you said something early on that I want to get clarification for the audience, Suge. You said early on, you can't just look at Diddy in isolation. You said this was done to him. He learned from others, and it was done to him, and then he did to others. To me, that sounds like what I hear when people are talking about situations, you know, hurt people, that someone was, they wind up being a perpetrator. Is that what you're suggesting about Sean Combs, that he was used and he now uses?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. I think he repeat what was done to him. And like I said, if you look at Russell Simmons, you know the truth. Andre Rail, you know the truth. Clyde Davis, you know the truth. Jimmy Iovine, you know the truth. So there's not certain things that all of a sudden you got this. The industry is a quick business. It's been like that for a long time. And the casting couch is real, but it's for women and men. But far from all that, I think the most important thing is I feel like they should let Puffy tell his truth. I'm quite sure he's going to expose a lot of people. I'm sure he's going to move forward with it. But I don't think it should be a situation like the Epstein thing where they found him hanging from the ceiling or dead before the truth come out.
One brutal caption summed it up. Yes, sir. I'll dance for you, sir. The sting wasn't only about who was in that room. It was when he was in it. Snoop had already been under a microscope because of whispers about his ties to Diddy, rumors of him playing both sides in industry politics, and Suge Knight's long-running claims that he was never as loyal as he looked. Add that history to this particular stage, and suddenly the performance looked less like a gig and more like fuel to a slow-burning fire. Every clip from that night got replayed like courtroom evidence.
And I knew that Pac did everything right by him by putting him on All Eyes on Me, speaking about him and being real with him. And if it's true what they say,
this call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
Face-to-face is going to be a lot of explaining to do. Only way you have a radio if you was at the fight with us and you had a security detail.
Introducing the one and only
Now, I'm not having a security detail.
Mike Tyson.
What are you doing with the radio?
People who once brushed off old rumors started circulating them louder, like the stage itself confirmed their suspicions. Inside the industry, mixed messages started floating around. Who was actually performing? Who was just in the building? But online, nuance didn't stand a chance. The narrative hardened quick. Snoop had stepped into a room his younger self swore he'd never touch. For some, it was simple. Business is business. Show up, perform, collect the bag. For others, this was a line-crossing moment, a betrayal of the image he built his legacy on, a man who didn't need validation from anyone's office.
Nah, chill. I'm not performing. I am in Washington, D.C. right now, but I'm not performing. It's a private vibe I'm doing with my brother Snoop Dogg.
One,
2, 3 into the 4. Snoop Doggy Dogg and Dr. Dre is at the door, ready to make an entrance.
One moment he was America's favorite uncle, lighting up Olympic broadcasts and cracking jokes on TV. And the next, he was trending for the worst reasons. Once the internet decided it looked like a power move at the culture's expense, the conversation shifted from music to loyalty. By the end of the weekend, it wasn't just Snoop under fire. The whole lineup was being examined. Nelly came out with his "Respect the Office" defense. Ross stayed silent. Fans split in 2 camps.
But I am honored to be performing for the office, for the President of the United States, regardless. Ain't nan another president asked me to perform. Nan.
It's just business versus this is betrayal. But the loudest hit came from someone who never bites his tongue, comedian DL Hughley. And when he dropped his take, the timeline caught fire all over again. DL didn't ease in. He hit post and let the receipts talk. He stitched together old clips of Snoop clowning anyone who would dare take that stage with brand new footage of him doing the exact same thing. DL didn't yell, didn't over-explain. He just said, "Look in the mirror." And that landed like a verdict. Fans who were still on the fence suddenly had a frame. This wasn't just a performance, this was a pivot. And for DL, it wasn't random. He's been saying for years that power structures use celebrity faces as props. His message has always been clear. Take the culture's icons, stick them in a photo op, call it unity, and reap the benefits. So when DL pointed that same lens at Snoop, it felt consistent, not opportunistic. And it hit the audience personally. People remembered those 2010s clips of Snoop drawing lines in the sand.
So ain't nobody gonna perform for Donald Trump, huh? Which one of you jigaboo is gonna be the first one to do it? I'm waiting. I'm gonna roast one of you Uncle Tom is for doing it. Which one of you gonna do it first?
Clowning anyone who bent the knee. Pair that defiance with him grinning on inauguration weekend, and the internet did the math in seconds. DL's tone was precise, not about politics, but optics. Not about beats, but power. The message beneath his post was chillingly simple. If they can flip Snoop, they can flip the whole story of who holds the mic. That's why DL's post spread like a siren. It didn't just fuel fan disappointment, it reframed the entire moment. What's your word worth when the check is big enough? And because DL's been consistent over the years, this didn't feel like clout chasing. It felt like accountability. His post forced a reaction. One person in the lineup didn't hide. Nelly. He logged on, looked straight into the camera, and gave his take. This ain't about politics, he said. It's about respecting the office. He explained it like a pro. This wasn't about endorsing a politician. It was about professionalism. I perform for anybody in that seat.
Jose, man, you playing to win tonight, man. You sharp as a mosquito. What's going down? That's that crypto, see? They let a real crip up in the crypto ball. Ooh. Bang, bang.
Was the spirit of it. Clean, calm, confident. The kind of explanation in that usually cools a fire. But this time it didn't, because the backlash wasn't about Nelly personally. It was about the image of Snoop in that room after years of tough talk. So when Nelly said, "It's about the office," the internet heard, "It's about the bag." Comments flipped his logic upside down. If it's truly apolitical, why does it look like a PR stunt for the other side? Why does it feel like one of the culture's biggest faces is being used to rebrand a moment? Fair or not, intent didn't matter. Optics ruled, and DL jumped on that gap. He didn't question Nelly's right to work. He questioned the message. He called out a pattern he's been highlighting for years: power staging unity with black celebrity faces, then ignoring the communities those faces came from. He reminded everyone, it's not just about who asked you to perform. It's about what your presence communicates when you show up. That line flipped Nelly's neutral stance into a conversation about leverage. Meanwhile, the internet kept resurfacing old clips, Snoop's old jokes about never doing that, now stitched next to the weekend's footage. Then verses, now promise verses, practice. For fans who grew up on Snoop's defiance, this wasn't a nuanced issue. It felt like a reversal. And once a reversal goes viral, it doesn't belong to the artist anymore. It belongs to the crowd. Rick Ross tried to stay quiet, but silence doesn't save you when the timeline's in attack mode. Just being associated was enough to drag him in. From hustling to hustling for the White House, one viral comment said, and it hit hard. By Monday, 2 narratives were locked in a standoff. Both sides claimed to be realistic, but only one side remembered every promise made on the way up. And that's where the debate heated up. Because when you talk about promises and loyalty, one name always crawls out of the shadows: Suge Knight. Even from behind bars, Suge has spent years chipping away at Snoop's halo, hinting that the loyalty wasn't as pure as fans believed. While Pac went all in, Suge says Snoop kept doors open on both sides. He's even questioned the famous hospital story, the one where Snoop claimed he got kicked out trying to visit Pac. Suge's version, more myth than memory. So when the internet started dragging loyalty into the mix, Suge's old accusations suddenly had a new stage to stand on. And that's where the story shifted, from a ballroom stage back to the death row era, where these fractures first began. Those are some heavy claims, and Suge has repeated them enough times that they've become a permanent echo every time Snoop's loyalty or credibility gets put under the microscope. Let's be clear, these are Suge's allegations, not confirmed facts. But when moments like this hit the timeline, allegations don't need evidence to shape public opinion. They just need oxygen. And the inauguration clips gave them all the air they needed. As the footage looped on every platform, Suge's old interviews started popping up again like clockwork. Fans dug up sound bites, the industry rat label, the insinuations that Snoop always played chess while everyone else played checkers, the suggestion that the clean exits and cushy brand deals weren't coincidence. These are still just claims, but when you pair a controversial stage with a long memory, the narrative practically writes itself. People started connecting dots they've been holding on to for years. And that's the danger for any legend who's built a spotless mainstream image. Snoop spent the last decade becoming America's uncle, doing Olympic commentary, cooking with Martha Stewart, popping up in family-friendly cameos, starring in commercials that rack up more streams than some new singles. It was a masterclass in reinvention. But the bigger the smile gets, the easier it is for critics to call it a mask. After that weekend, the mood shifted. The jokes, he's on every product but loyalty, stopped being funny quips. They started sounding like verdicts from fans who grew up on gin and juice and ain't no fun. Fans who once believed Snoop would never trade the porch for the podium. Still, even Suge's loudest accusations live in the gray zone. The facts haven't caught up to the whispers, and the whispers haven't turned into evidence. But culture doesn't always wait for court. It moves on what feels true, and what felt true after that weekend was simple. The man who once drew a line in the sand had just crossed it. Whether that's fair or not almost didn't matter. The narrative had momentum, and momentum online is ruthless. Which brings us back to DL Hughley's angle, the one that cut deeper than any insult. His framing stripped away the lights, the beats, the jokes, and focused on symbolism. This wasn't about a set list, it was about leverage. According to DL, this wasn't a concert, it was a power move. The performance wasn't listen to the music, it was look who we can bring on stage. In that lens, every bar became background noise, every chorus a distraction. Snoop's face, the same face that once mocked this exact room, was now smiling on cue. That's not collaboration, that's a demonstration. When you look at it that way, the booking strategy makes perfect sense. You don't stack the lineup with yesterday's troublemakers. You pick the one legend whose brand crosses every aisle. Snoop is global, generational, algorithm-proof. He's the uncle your mom knows, the meme your kids share, the classic your older brother quotes. If you're sending a message, you don't need noise, you need credibility. The night stopped being about music. It became a picture, and the caption practically wrote itself. Even your icons show up here. Fans caught that shift instantly. Comment sections weren't dissecting his flow or set quality, they were decoding power plays. He didn't need your bars, just your presence, one viral post said. Another wrote, this wasn't a gig, this was a checkmate. And that framing stung because it flipped Snoop's image from player to piece, a pawn in a room that he used to joke about. For someone whose entire career was built on autonomy, that's a deep cut. It suggests his agency took the night off, and that's exactly why the pushback snowballed. Once a performance reads like a signal, people start rewinding everything. Old interviews, brand deals, friendships. Moves that once looked like strategy suddenly look like breadcrumbs leading to this moment. Online, perception sets the pace. Logic lags behind. And once the power flex idea caught on, the rumor mill kicked into overdrive. Threads started popping up, claiming Snoop's been protected for years, that he glides through storms untouched while everyone around him gets hit. Fans stitched together headlines like a detective board, the brand deals that never dry up, the Olympic commentary gig, the family-friendly commercials, the way he dodged blowback when others didn't. To some, it was elite business. To others, it was playing both teams. Soon, unrelated scandals got lumped in. With industry investigations swirling, timelines started throwing Snoop's name into conversations that had nothing to do with him. Not because of evidence, but because momentum greater than proof. One viral comment summed up the vibe. Notice how he never really gets touched? That ain't luck. It wasn't evidence, but it was persuasive to a crowd already primed to doubt. That's the trap of icon status in the internet era. The higher you climb, the easier it is for people to rewrite your path if invisible hands paved it. Snoop's decades-long run, the clean exits, the crossover appeal, the endless relevance suddenly looked too smooth to some. Suge's old soundbites slotted in like missing puzzle pieces. Industry rat here, always kept doors open there. Again, claims, not facts, but the timing made them feel fresh, like they've been waiting for this exact weekend to resurface. Snoop's own reaction didn't help. He cracked a few light jokes online, kept it casual, and refused to get specific. That usually works when the story's small. But this time, the crowd wanted clarity, not vibes. Silence got read as strategy. Stay above the noise, let the algorithm move on. Except, the algorithm didn't. It kept looping the footage, refeeding the claims, stitching together a bigger picture. That the smiling face of hip-hop's most beloved uncle might have a playbook the culture never got to see. And that's when the conversation stopped being about a gig and started being about identity. Because if the perception hardens that you're safe because you're useful to the rooms that once mocked you, your music can't talk you out of it. Optics own the story. Fans aren't just judging what you did, they're judging what it seems to mean. That's why this chapter hits harder than conspiracy talk. It's not just about rumors. It's about legacy, loyalty, and expectations. Snoop's career didn't survive 3 decades on hits alone. It survived on a promise, authenticity that could shapeshift without selling out. He was the cool constant through eras that aged everyone else. So when that weekend turned into a split screen, old Snoop talking tough versus new Snoop smiling at the podium, it pressed on the legacy. Older heads saw a line crossed. They remembered the 90s code. Pick a side, stand on it, live with the consequences. Younger fans raised on branding saw adaptability, a veteran making the game pay him. One side hears music, the other sees a message. That's the bind for a legend who manages to become mainstream without losing street memory. The more beloved you are, the less room you have to be ambiguous. Your word becomes your currency, and a single weekend can feel like a charge back on 30 years of credit. For some, the Martha dinners, Olympic commentary, and crossover moves were proof that Snoop became universal without bowing. For others, those moments are now exhibits in a case against him. Comment sections split down the middle. He's playing chess. Nah, he's being played. That's just business. Business is the excuse. People didn't just question the choice, they questioned the compass. And once the compass is in doubt, every past detour looks like a prequel. That's how one performance turns into a parable. Not about one night, but about what a legend owes to the people who believed in him when the rooms were smaller, the money thinner, and the risks louder. If there's one through line in the backlash, it's disappointment, not rage. Not because Snoop can't evolve, but because fans thought they knew where he'd draw the line. That was the brand he built. A man who could be everywhere and still feel like he was right here. The memes will fade, the jokes will pass, but doubt lingers, and doubt is the one thing a legacy can't afford. All eyes turn to Snoop's feed. If this moment is about loyalty and optics, the only thing that slows the storm is his voice. Not a wink, not a slogan. Clarity. A reason that feels bigger than a check and sharper than a punchline. When he finally addressed it, Snoop didn't argue politics, he leaned on identity. Pride over policy, no walkbacks, no long threads, just that calm, untouchable tone that's carried him through every era. To some, it was poise. To others, it was convenient silence where answers should have been. And that's the tug of war defining this moment. Legend is lighthouse versus legend is logo. So now the question lands in your hands. Was this a neutral gig in a polarized world, or a public pivot that crossed the line he once drew himself? If it was just business, why does it feel like symbolism won the night? And if it was deeper, why not own the message? The answer lives in the gap between brand and belief. And right now, that gap is the timeline's favorite battlefield. Where do you stand? Drop your take below. Business move or cultural betrayal? Like, share, subscribe, because this story isn't over. The next chapter is already loading.